part of my differentiator is that I've worked so closely with startups and, smaller companies from pre-seed to Series A, really focusing on those initial marketing strategies of how to, kind of build out how you find your initial customers, how you, discover your story, your narrative, your messaging, and kind of like work all that, how to set up emails, social media, blogs, and everything from the beginning to get you to like the point that you're, actively reaching out to like your customers and, bringing in more leads. And I do both in terms of like the strategy aspect of it and like the business plan and the execution of it, which is a little rare in startups.
Dishonesty, disrespectful, discrimination, detached, dismissive. That's it. I'm done. Relationships can be messy. Are you having trouble with your personal or professional relationship? Not to worry. As a relationship therapist and coach for over 25 years, I have a lot to share, and so will my guest experts. Let's get smarter in our business and personal lives so we can be our best selves. Now, let's get on with the show. Welcome to episode 14 of Mixing Business with Pleasure. And I am going to introduce you to Sonia Baschez today. She is what sounds like a marketing guru. And if you're in the need of some marketing for your own company, listen in. But even if you're not, um, we talk a lot about like I learned a lot about, I guess, the type of mindset that a marketer tries to employ, and that makes a marketer a good marketer. And, what I can see, it's sort of strategic thinking combined with bringing in a lot of emotion to it. And I think it's so nice because, in the same way, this is sort of, more of a linear way of thinking combined with a much more like sort of like emotional or right side left side, sort of like using both sides of our brain, you could say, which it also really just like, this is sort of why I created the podcast. It's sort of like we can combine pleasure feelings, like what brings a lot of fulfillment in life with business. And to me, that's sort of what makes a good couple as well. A couple that works well together, takes care of each other's um emotional needs, but also like runs a tight ship, like within their relationship. And we talk about this. The first part of the episode, you're going to hear a lot about, yeah, what makes someone, good at marketing, and what marketing specialists really tries to promote and do, and all the creativity that goes into that. And then in the latter part, we talk a lot about relationships and how, you can keep your personal life in order and still be very passionate in your work and get things done in both sectors of your life. So yeah, I love this podcast. Well, I mean, yes, I love my podcast, but I really really enjoyed speaking with Sonia today, and I hope you do as well. And read up on her bio; it's in the show notes. Thanks. So Sonia, tell me what you do and how you got to doing what you do right now.
Yeah. So about a few months ago, I left my job at a startup where I was head of marketing, and I was essentially worked with them for 4 years to set up their marketing from the ground up, from email to press, um, social media, content, blogs, and all that, to start my own company, helping other early stage companies from pre-seed to Series A
Okay,
do all their marketing.
I need to stop you right there. Okay, so how long were you with that company, that startup?
I was with them for 4 years.
4 years. Okay, that's a long time.
Yeah.
So, what was it a difficult decision for you?
Yes and no. It was difficult in the sense that it was comfortable, and I liked the people, liked what I was doing. It was a really interesting concept. We were helping people design custom homes, um,
Mm.
so that was always for me like a really great mission of how we could change the world. Um, but I also gotten to the point where I just needed a new challenge. 4 years, like you said, was a really long time. It's the longest I've ever been at a company.
Yeah.
um, so I'd already been itching to kind of move on. It's just the difficult part was also trying to decide what I wanted to do, whether I wanted to go to another early stage startup, go to like a bigger company, or do what I'm doing now, which is starting my own fractional CMO business for those types of companies.
Oh,
And so far,
oh,
I'm enjoying that a lot more.
cool. Okay, before I ask you to define, fractional C.
CMO, yeah,
Okay,
like chief marketing officer, so fractional chief marketing officer.
okay. Before that, I mean, I just wanted to kind of highlight that, like when I meet with people, you either are someone who wants more, like, how would I define it? Like, you want to be more than, I don't want to say mediocre, but you want to be more than just normal. Like you want more. Like, it's sort of like you have a vision, like you said, like it was very comfortable. I love the people. Good job. But there was something more. And I mean, I think it's cool. I love a person with a vision. So okay, so you had to challenge yourself. Was it scary, or was the market for your work like plentiful, and you knew you would land something right away?
Well, it's certainly plentiful in the sense that I know there are a lot of companies that need what I can do. Um, and then, but that's always, it's always going to be a little, you know, frightening putting yourself out there and actually having to well, like one of the things I joke about is that like now that I have to market myself, it's a completely different concept than like marketing a company that I work for, or like
Exactly.
the people that I'm like working with. So I've
Yeah.
had to kind of try to think of myself as like a business so that I have less of that like anxiety about having to promote myself in the way that I need to in order to grow my business in that way. But I've found that, yeah, my years working with that company, and then other relationships that I've made in terms of like networking. Like the network has been so important to try to get me in front of the people and the clients that I need to be in front of. So I've found that I found plenty of clients, and I've gone to the point that now I am being a little bit more picky about who I
Hmm.
work with. But that'll be changing a little bit in a little bit, where I'll be able to kind of take on a few more clients in the
Yeah,
future.
no, we'll talk about that. Like, oh God, like this is my problem. I have so many ideas popping in my head at one time, and while you were talking, I didn't want to interrupt you, but like, um, just like I like the idea of how you said, I have to think of myself as a business, and I need to invest in myself right now, and promote myself and my work. Um, and it's not always easy, but like, yeah, but I know it's something I need to do. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you took the leap, and ho- like how does it feel? Like how does it feel now to have done that? And you said it was only how many months? Like a couple months?
Yeah, so it's been since April.
Okay. Okay. So
April,
how
May, June, July, August, 4 months.
and yeah, how okay, first of all, did you study marketing? Because yeah, that's what the question was. Like what's I want to know if you studied marketing, and I want to know what sort of mindset a good marketing person needs to have, like that kind of skill set, that mindset. But did you first, like when you 18 was like, yeah, I want to do this?
I no. I had no clue what marketing even was when I was in college. So I went to school at Berkeley, and I studied political science and peace and conflict studies. I thought I was gonna, be in government or some,
Yeah.
LPO of some sort, help change the world, blah blah
Yeah.
blah. But I graduated in 2009. So the recession and the market kind of
Mm,
hit everybody and everything. So my first job was working for social services at Alameda County in Oakland, and that was just really hard job. And I realized I didn't have the fortitude for it. So I, went looking for another job, and I landed at what was a company that got acquired by Kodak Gallery. Sorry, by Kodak, called Kodak Gallery. And while I was there, I started, looking at the different teams that were there, and kind of landed with marketing. It seemed the most interesting at the time for me. I'd always wanted to do something like creative, and where you kind of come up with ideas. And at the time, Facebook and social media was like the new way to talk
that's
to your
true.
customers.
Yeah.
Um, so as like the resident millennial, they're like, here, figure out, Facebook and how we can talk to our customers a little bit more. So that's kind of how I got my start in social media marketing. From there, I moved on to another company. I started expanding on that. And then one of the things I'd say that, really came from my degree is the ability to learn how to to know how to write well,
Oh, yeah.
like in a persuasive way. So I spent a few years at an architecture firm, an immigration law firm, where a lot of what my job entailed was taking, say lawyers wanting to present to tech companies who were our main customers, um, make presentations to them in a way that was simplified, and
Yeah.
simplified language that would make them understand what we were trying to say, without having blocks and blocks of text. So that kind of became um, pretty much like what ended up moving me into writing and creating like blog content, that sort of stuff. And so then after that, I made the leap to Ernst and Young, because I'm like, oh, you should work like at a big company, see what that's like, and have that stability,
Mm.
because there'd been so much like moving around. So I did that. I didn't like it. It was too big of a company. So ever since then, I know like big companies are just not for me. It doesn't really give you the ability to be creative and like move as much. You're kind of just everybody kind of has like their role that you fill, and that's kind of it. Um, so after that, I went to the Hillary campaign. I was there as an email writer. And that was like an experience like no other. I kind of equate it to like working at a super early stage startup that's like growing really quick, because have to like your output is just like insane. You just every day we were writing 6 to 10 emails to people every day, right? And
Yeah.
what I was in charge of was the 38 non-battleground states. So that's all the big ones: New York, California, Texas. So if you ever got an email from me for the Hillary campaign, that was me. Uh,
No, well, I'm Canadian, so I would have never have heard that.
yeah. So what I had to learn there was, basically how do you write an email to convince people to come out to vote, to volunteer, to like, participate in all these like events that we were
Mm.
having. And pretty awesome experience learning how to write in Hillary Clinton's voice and Michelle Obama and President Obama.
Wow.
So that became like another thing that was able to add to like my toolbox.
Well,
And
like,
then
yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, like it makes a lot of sense. You were talking about like, having the skill of writing for persuasion. I mean,
Right.
and then you're also taking your studies from, conflict and political, like, yeah,
Hmm.
you tie that all into that Hillary campaign job then really nicely. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So like what do you I don't know if you can kind of sum it up, but like, you use the word persuasion. Like, what are some other words, like verbs, that you could use when you think about writing copy to sell something? Like sell a vote, sell a product, sell a service, like persuasion. What are some other, like, bring the motion into it? Like,
Yeah. Um, I don't know, that's hard because like the first thing that comes to mind is like personalization. And I think
mm,
that that's kind of what started around that, that campaign, at least for me, where you want to be as direct as possible to like each individual. So you're trying to find the things that they will relate to the most. Um, so that's like whether we are writing for people in California, it's like how do you convince them to go to Nevada to help knock on doors, right? And it was like the bigger mission of like what you're trying to do and like the importance of it, right? And like how much what the work that they were doing was making a difference.
yeah.
So that what I'd say, work there. And then I kind of took that into, the rest of the companies that I end up like working at after, the campaign where, now customers really want to relate to either the company or like the type of product or business that they're using. That's one thing that I've kind of seen has been like changing, that like now people are a lot more aware about like where they're purchasing products from and what those companies are doing,
Mm,
whether
yeah.
that's doing like I mean, we've seen like the protests against certain companies or because they
Mm,
don't align with our values, um, or
yeah.
even now that we're starting to see some products kind of go down in value in terms of like what they're being made from, and all that, like
Mhm.
you really have to find another way to like talk to the customer, like at a personal level, as opposed to just saying like, oh, buy our stuff, we're the most popular like shoe brand in the world or whatever.
Yeah, you're right. That's interesting that you said that, like in terms of, what the company stands for, or because yeah, I was just in the grocery store the other day and I'm picking out an avocado, and yeah, I just started a conversation with this lady that was picking out an avocado too, and she's like, yeah, no, I'm shopping here more now, because yeah, like I don't like what X and X company, are standing for, and I'm just like, what? Like, I'm like, like, I'm just picking up an avocado, but like, but yeah, I can
Yeah.
see that some people are just much more in tune and interested in terms of what the company stands for, and how they're sourcing their goods and everything like that. So yeah, really neat. So what I'm hearing you say then is sort of like, you know, when you think about marketing, and you think of like speaking to the person or writing to the person, whatever that might be, is, the bigger mission. And then, how does this apply to me? Right? Probably bringing it back to them as well. It's sort of like, this is the mission of the company, and this is
Right.
why you should care, sort of thing.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I enjoy working with, early stage companies, because a lot of the companies are started by founders that have found something that needs to be changed in that industry or that specific um, like vertical, and they have some idea of how they can improve a system or a process. And so those are the types of companies I love working with, because it's like, oh, they have like a personal stake already in it, right?
Yeah.
Um, they already have an idea of who like their potential customer is, either because they were that potential customer, or they saw like a problem within the company that they were working at that needed to be fixed, and then now they're applying like what they've learned at other tech companies, or found other forms, say with like AI like rising, like how we can use AI in a way to make that easier for companies going forward. So then you talk to those founders and you like try to find that nugget of like, okay, well, what was the unique insight that you found, that will now separate you out from your competitors? And so that's one of the initial exercises that I do with folks, is kind of figure out what's their unique insight, and then build out from there like how they can position themselves and the company, write up their like mission and values, so that they align with the type of customer that they're going after. And then from that, we kind of build out more of a messaging scheme, so that when they do reach out to their customer like immediately gets it. And obviously that's kind of condensing it and simplifying like what the process actually is, because then it requires testing to go back and forth, um, when you're actually talking to the customer, to see which messaging actually hits with them, um, and then go back and forth that way. But that's part of
Yeah.
the journey that I enjoy, because it's like, how do you distill the idea that they created into something that's understandable to their potential customer?
I guess like, I never thought of marketing being so creative before, but it's so creative. Like
Hmm.
when you think of it that way, and it's also fun, and like again, it's like I'm learning something here in terms of, will this work? Will they bite on this?
Yeah.
Oh no, I thought that this is going to be fantastic, but no, no. Okay, so back to plan B, or to plan B
Hmm.
now, or whatever.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
mean that's the thing, where it's like especially with smaller companies, you're able to test so much more, because you know that like you haven't found like the message that sticks. So you have more bandwidth, and obviously you're more aligned with like, hey, we really need to get these customers and get in front of them. How do we do that as fast as possible? So we have to test out the different messaging to make sure that it's like hitting. And then once you find like something that hits, it's like, okay, jump on that and then expand as much as you can, in order to see, is it this this aspect of the message, or is it this that's like hitting more? Is it like cost, that they really care about, or is it the value? Is it like how you're actually improving their process? Like which aspect is it? And then growing from there, because sometimes it's not just about cost.
I think it's rarely about cost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I do have a few customers that, yeah, it's like, oh, it really does come down to cost. But then it's like, okay, cost in terms of like volume, or like can we spin that in terms of like the amount of time that your employees spend on a problem, as opposed to the cost
Mm.
monetarily, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, also like as exciting as all this is sounding right now, it's also like almost overwhelming because there's just so many different variables that
Yeah.
might, like, because as you were talking too, I was thinking, okay, let's say you did this campaign and you did on social media, and you go into the analytics and you see that, oh my God, yeah, they subscribe to your YouTube channel. Now, like, but what, first of all, what video did they watch in order to subscribe to it? But also, like, okay, no, no, you got a bunch more followers on Instagram. Was it the color? Was it, the advertisement? Was it the music? Is that why they, caught their attention? Or was it the actual message, or the, like, oh my God, like,
Yeah, but that's part of like the fun part, right? Because it's like you're trying all these things, and then you have to figure out which one's stuck, and then kind of like expand from there, right? And you're never doing one thing as like at a time, right? So
no, right.
yesterday I was talking to one of my clients about They wanted to do like cold emailing to
Yeah.
folks. And I was like, yes, that's a great idea, but you might also want to supplement it with like targeted, like LinkedIn ads. So they hear about you from an email, but then they also hear about you on LinkedIn, and you're kind of like attacking them from like
Mm,
different
mm,
angles. And it's not just, a cold email, which,
mhm.
it works in some cases, but then it also, puts a wall up in front of people, right? Because it's like, oh, we have a random person like emailing me,
Right,
so like,
right.
why should I pay attention to them? So part of, what you're trying to do there is also find what messaging is going to work the best for someone that you're cold emailing, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Um, you mentioned AI, which is something I wanted to talk to you a little bit about. Like, do you see AI being is it more helpful or more of a like do you worry about your career? Like how some careers like are, will AI take over? Like
No, so I think AI is a tool. It's going to be supplementary. We just all kind of have to learn how to use it in a way that'll expand what we currently do. So my husband, Nathan, works on a company called Lex that is a writing platform with AI baked in. Um, so that was always like a thing, going back and forth. It was like, oh, like, what are you doing with your AI? Like, is this really going to replace writers? And it's like, no, good writers are going to use it to help them come up with ideas, write, and use it as part of their process as they're developing their own writing. I
yeah.
don't think that we're going to have people, um, that's not true. I mean, we're already seeing, right? Especially you hear stories of like college where it's like college students are using it to like write essays for them. But I mean, it's just, I
Yeah.
think colleges should be using it as a way to teach students to like, use it as a tool to come up with their ideas and expand on that, rather than like trying to deny that they're using it or deny them using it. Um, and then in
Yeah.
terms of like marketing, it's funny because marketing is like one of the jobs that people say is, oh, it's easily replaceable by AI. Well, I've tried some of those
Yeah.
programs, and it's like um, it can't really expand on something unless what you're prompting it to do is a unique idea, right? So
Yes.
I think part of what we're already seeing is like you know the centralization of like ideas, as people copy other people, right? So
Yeah.
and then like, the
Yeah.
AI is just learning, oh, this is like what works right now because people are saying the same thing over and over again. So that messaging is going to become like really tired really quickly. Um, Whereas I think there's going to be like a separation between like the people that, are trying to save money, use those programs to like, help them with their marketing versus the ones that are going to be like, okay, but now we actually want to stand out in some way to our customers. And to do that, we need, human creativity to kind of like flow from that. So for me, what I'm, focusing on is like, how do I expand on like the creativity of like my ideas and like my plans and strategies, using AI to kind of like help me out. Like I use my husband's word
Mhm.
processor pretty much every day to help
Yeah.
me come up with ideas, and
Yeah.
then kind of expand on that. So
Yeah,
I
it's no, you're right. I think you explained that really well because even I see it like when I write my blogs and things like that, like I have to feed AI something. Like, I can't just say, "Hey, write up a blog post on emotional regulation." And it's sort of like it never would I do that because I want
yeah.
my own. But but also like I noticed too, like sometimes, okay, I'll take my copy that I wrote and I'll ask for specific things from AI for it, like clean it up, make sure I don't have run-on sentences, make it as very clear as possible, stuff like that. But then if I see AI using terms that like that term is just way overused. I'll just say like stop, like do not use that. I hate that, like that. Please do not use that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, like, but, like, if you don't have that sort of mindset to, like you say, tell it the right things or use it the right way, then you're just gonna be like everybody else, out there, like, so
Yeah. And I
yeah.
think that's gonna be like the huge differentiator. I mean, it's not even just AI and just in general. I mean, as we've
Yeah.
seen huge tech layoffs in these past, couple years, the way that you're going to stand out is by, doing more, being different, and like taking, the initiative yourself to figure out what skills you need and where you like fit in, whether like at a small company or like a bigger company. You're just going to be competing with more, in including AI.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. You know, maybe we'll talk a little bit about, okay, well, actually, um what, like, so why would people want to hire you? Like, how are you different than any other company out there? First of all, what's the name of your company?
it's called bend growth.
Hmm, cool. How
Mhm.
did you choose that name?
Well, it took a while actually. This was one of those conversations with my husband, kind of going back and forth about like,
Yeah.
oh, what's a good name? And it just became like bend, like, seeing the curve go up.
Oh,
um,
yeah.
yeah, so
Okay. Okay. Um, I want to talk more about how you and your husband work together, bringing more, business and pleasure, tying it all together. But before I do that, like, because I asked
yeah, yeah.
yeah, why you?
Yeah, so I'd say for me, part of my differentiator is that I've worked so closely with startups and, smaller companies from pre-seed to Series A, really focusing on those initial marketing strategies of how to, kind of build out, how you find your initial customers, how you
Mm.
discover your story, your narrative, your messaging, and kind of like work all that, how to set up emails, social media, blogs, and everything from the beginning to get you to like the point that you're, actively reaching out to like your customers and, bringing in more leads. And I do both in terms of like the strategy aspect of it and like the business plan and the execution of it. Which is a little rare in startups, because either they bring in a marketing person a little bit later on, um, or they bring in like a more junior person that doesn't really have the strategy experience. So kind of
Yeah.
carves a little space for myself there.
Yeah, you're right. It's completely different aspects of what you do in many ways, and but both are necessary. Like, if you don't have a strategy, like, you just kind of,
Throwing ideas at the wall, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
and what startups end up doing a lot of the time, right? Is like, oh, let's try this. Oh, let's try this. Or one of the the worst ones is like, oh, let's throw money into ads, and it's just like, okay, but if you haven't figured out what your messaging is, who your customer is, you're kind of just throwing money into the fire
Yeah.
without like coming up with the strategy of like, okay, what's our goal here? What do we expect people to do? And then once they actually do come, are we like set up to, convert those leads going forward? So there's a lot of little things that should be done before you kind of throw fire into, or add fuel to the fire.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And yeah, yeah, every day could be a different idea. And it
Mm,
sounds like the best idea ever until, like, it doesn't work. And then,
right.
you're doing it again and again.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. So that's why I learned a lot from, working at the startup I was with for 4 years. It's like those early initial like tests that we kind of like did was like, oh yeah, let's, throw money behind it. And it's just like, oh, you pull back and realize, oh wow, did we just like spend all this money on ads and not really have that conversion that we were looking for? And then you kind of like take it back and it's like, well, was it the messaging or was it, the customer that we're going after? So it's like there's a lot of testing that you can do and go into that, but it takes you kind of like either having someone at a different company that's doing something similar to tell you, oh, these are like the mistakes we made, or find thinking about how you would do it. But a lot of people just don't have that like marketing
Well,
um, like
mindset. That's what I was
mindset,
gonna.
right?
Yeah,
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 like yeah, like that's why I asked you, like, what kind of mindset, like, does a marketing person, a skilled marketing person, needs to
yeah.
have? And it's, but like the way you're describing it, it's such broad skill set. Like, there's so
Mhm.
many balls in the air. It seems at the same time. It's like it's really quite interesting. Like, I'd love to be able to like scan your brain when all this stuff is going on and seeing all the places it's lighting up, sort of
Yeah,
all the different, yeah, areas of
yeah.
your brain. Never a dull moment, that's for sure. It's
No, no. But that's kind of what I enjoy now, where it's like that, um, both the flexibility
Mhm.
to be creative, but then also like the resourcefulness to like be bringing in like taking the inputs that I see from other companies and like what's working there, and being like, oh, this is how we could try it out for this company or this client.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay. So, okay. Oh, and just to be clear then, is it all experience that brings you this skill set right now, or did you actually study marketing in the end?
um, No, it's all just been work. So I
Yeah,
found that I'm very like I learn through doing.
yeah,
Um
yeah,
so yeah, and it's funny because I guess I at most of the companies I went, I did a focus in like social media, then I did a focus on like blog and like content, then I did a focus on emails. So it's like it runs like the gamut. And then at like the last startup I was at, I started doing like PR, so like public relations in order to like get us press. That was like a brand new skill that was just like came out of necessity. It's just like, okay,
yeah,
how do we announce our raise? Okay, well, we can either hire an agency that's going to charge us, a lot of money, or I could just learn how to do it. And it was like one of those things like, oh, okay, I'll just like learn how to do it. And then so now it's become the thing that a lot of clients actually, opt in for because they're like, oh, yeah, like, why shouldn't I do this? And it's funny because it's like there's right now this idea that like, oh, press doesn't really get you much in like the tech world, but a lot of my clients are finding that they do, especially when they go local, because it's like that's where their customers are, right? So it's like
yeah,
even if you're not going, national, like go into like local papers or trade magazines where it's like the people that you're actively trying to get on board, that's what they read, and that's what
yeah.
they say. So it's like, how do you build a level of trust and legitimacy for your product by going exactly where they are to the places that they do trust? So that's kind of the angle that I
Hmm.
pitch my clients on, to get them on board. And they usually find that like even if it's not bringing in leads after leads after leads, when they do reach out to people, the client's like, oh yeah, I saw you on external, or I saw that you were written about on here.
Yeah.
So it has a like different dynamic where you're kind of like I mentioned before, you're targeting people in different ways so that they hear about you, and you're building that brand awareness even before you're ready to bring in or convert them as users.
Right. No, it makes so much sense. Like the way you're linking trust to an outside source, like they may not trust you, but
Right.
yeah, they trust a reputable magazine. And if you're in that magazine or whatever, I mean, yeah, by default, they're just gonna trust. Yeah, I love it. It's like, why did I become a psychotherapist? My job is so boring. Anyway, okay, so bring psychology a bit into this. Like one thing I noticed is you spoke a little bit about your husband, and your husband is also in a startup company. Runs his.
Yes.
Oh
Yeah, yeah.
wow.
So he has his own. It's Yeah, lex.com. Or, no, sorry, not .com. Sorry, lex.page. But
Okay.
Lex, and
What
yeah, he started
LEX?
years ago. Lex, Lex.
Okay. And what is that? Like a shout out to Lex. What is Lex?
Yeah, so it's a word processor that has AI baked in, so it'll help you, write as you're going
Oh,
through. Yeah, one of the things like it does is you type in, what you write, and then you have it run checks for you. So not just grammar and spelling, but it'll tell you like, are you speaking in a persuasive voice? Are you being repetitive? Are you being concise enough,
cool.
so tell you, oh, these are maybe words that you want to cut out. One of the ones that I really like is the brevity one. It's a
Oh,
brevity check to basically tell you, oh, hey, you can cut all this out so that you kind of trim it and make it a little bit simpler
oh
for
my God.
people.
Okay,
um
tell him to get on like a speaking, some sort of speaking app for that. Like, cause sort of like, I need that. I need
yeah.
that. Cut out the ums, cut out the
Yeah,
yeah.
I say
That's
less.
amazing. That sounds
Yeah, no,
great.
it's doing really well. They're growing pretty well. So that's, super exciting for him. He's been working on this for over a year now.
That's
So
it. I thought you were gonna say like, wow, okay.
yeah.
So you guys are both functioning at a really like high level, like fast paced work. I mean, you're both like, you're not just working for a company, you're working for yourselves. Um, so how do you do that all? Like, how long have you been married, if you don't mind me asking? Or are you married?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
We've been married 5 years, but we've been together about 12 now. Is it? No, wait. 2012 to 20, yeah, 12 years. Ooh.
How did you meet? How did you meet?
The old school way at a bar.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah. Yeah, we met in San Francisco. He had just moved from Palo Alto up to the big city, and we
Yeah.
met like, the first week that he was there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Okay, neat. And do you have children?
we do. We have a 2-year-old who, yeah, is now that she's growing older, is requiring more and more attention. Yeah, that plays into how our dynamic as well with like the businesses, right? Where it's like we're constantly trying to find the time to both be able to focus on our own work. We're lucky we have my mom who comes to take care of our kid every day of the week
Wow.
from about like 9 to 4. So that's usually our work day. And we
Yeah.
both work from home as well. So
Okay.
he has his office, I have mine.
Yeah.
But it also makes it easy for us to, go out and like see our kid, throughout
Yeah.
the day. That's
Sounds
yeah.
ideal. Sounds
Yeah.
ideal.
Yeah.
Bless your mom. Wow,
Yeah.
that's nice. Yeah. Great. And financially too. Wow. Like what a help, you know.
Yeah. I mean, we pay her as well, but
Yeah. But
um, it's definitely not as much as we would have to pay for childcare.
right, right. Yeah. Great. Okay, so how was the transition? I have to ask you quickly, like becoming a mom from, your work. Like, was
Mhm.
it what you thought it would be? Was it more challenging? Like, tell me about that.
Um, it was so those early days were definitely challenging just because we had no idea what we were doing. Um, but we had his parents come to help, and my parents were here as well. Um, And then I was at, my previous company at the time. So I was able to get 3 months of maternity leave. So that,
Mm.
really helped.
In Canada, that's nothing.
I know.
It's like a year. It's like a year we have. So yeah,
Yeah. Well, here, I mean, you're lucky if you even get, a month. So the fact that
crazy.
I got 3 was, yeah. But I was the first woman to take maternity leave. We had had a few fathers take paternity leave, but that was like about 2 weeks, I think, of like full time off. And then they got like 2 extra weeks kind of part time. And I was like the one that kind of set the policy of like, hey, no, I'm going to need actual
Yeah.
so that was, that was a journey to kind of setting
Yeah.
up policy. I was, really grateful that my company, helped
Mhm.
me with that. So I took two months off, the first go round, left 1 month like to take within like the year. Um, and yeah, I guess the transition, it was both like it was obviously difficult, like learning how to do everything, but I found that by, reaching that second month, I like really was looking forward to getting back to work and
Yeah.
having more like adult conversations.
Yeah. 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 And
Whereas
and
like
and
like the main focus is like the baby. So I remember my husband would come home and I'd be like, Nathan, talk to
yeah.
me, woman, tell me
Yeah.
how's the business going.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it
I
was
know.
definitely
I
made
need
her feel that
stimulation. Yeah.
way.
Yeah, and it's also the routine I find, a lot of people crave again. It's sort of like you know what to sort of expect, right? And whereas the child is up, the child is sleeping, the child is needing a diaper change, the child is yeah. So there's just like it's every minute is different. So
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. So yeah, going back to work was like, okay, how do I, get back into that? And it was funny because it's like at first I was like, oh, am I still like at the level of like being able to come up with ideas and be creative and like, do all that? And so there was a bit of hesitancy there, just like, oh, you've been out of the game for like 2 months. And then you think back on it, it's like literally 2 months. Come on, like
Yeah, yeah.
it's not
No.
that much time.
Yeah.
But it's so funny to kind of like think about it that way. And I think, that's part of how, we function here in America. Um,
Yeah.
where it's like, if you're not kind of staying on top of the game, it's like, oh, lost whatever, function you had. But I think like one of the things that it did end up helping me with is like prioritization, which I hadn't
Mm,
really thought about. Where it's like, okay,
mm.
how do you now schedule meetings and schedule how you're planning and like deep work while fitting in time with like your kid, because I was still breastfeeding at the time, so she would have to come in and like at the time it was like what every 2 hours.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
was okay. You got to like make make your schedule fit around that schedule.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and I really quickly kind of figured out, oh, like this is actually worth doing, this is not worth doing. uh,
Yes.
and so that became like the new challenge of like how do you kind of come up with new ideas and like do your work within a more limited scope.
Yeah.
uh, the whole what is that,
Yeah.
like it breeds creativity,
Right. Right. Right.
so
No, like
that like helped. And then I also think the fact that I was older when I had kids, because
mm,
it's like I had already known myself well enough to know how to both like spur myself on and then like being okay with like pulling back on things that like didn't matter as much.
yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Maturity definitely helps. Well, I mean, you don't look old. Like, do you mind me asking, like,
Yeah,
how
I'm
old are you?
37
You're
now.
37. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that's a pretty like it's getting to be a normalized age, like mid 30s.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it's always funny because you go to, like, the doctor and it's like, "Oh, it's a geriatric pregnancy once you're, like, past 35."
Oh my gosh.
So, it's always, like, the mindset, and I remember having that conversation with my doctor, I was like, "Oh, geriatric, right?" He's like,
Yeah.
"Actually, you're on the low end," 'cause I'm in LA.
Yeah.
He's like, "You're actually one of my younger clients,"
Oh,
or,
yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah.
one of my younger patients, I've
Yeah.
got, women older than you having their first kid, so I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay." So that
It's
made me feel a little bit better.
okay. Yeah. Neat. Okay. Well, okay. So, you mentioned something to me before I hit record that I thought was so neat when I asked you, the pronunciation of your last name. Um, Tell the audience about that.
Yeah, so it's pronounced Baschez,
Mhm.
and basically, you've probably never heard about it because my husband and I joined our last names. So he was Bashaw and I was Sanchez. So we kind of made our last name be Baschez.
Mhm.
And it's kind of funny how it started. It was like on a lark back in the day, when you do the I forget what it's called, but when you combine the words, and we were going on vacation with our families, so I was like, oh, I'll make it a hashtag, because that was such a big thing back in the day. This was like 2014, so it was like our family's going to meet for the first time, so it'll be the Bushes vacation.
Oh,
And it kind of like stuck with me. I was like, that's not a bad sounding name. And I'd always, kind of thought, whereas it's not where I was uncomfortable, but I didn't want to just, take my husband's last name. But then I also didn't like the idea of my kids having a different name
yeah.
than I did.
Yeah.
So kind of like, thinking about it more and more. And finally I just sat my husband down and was like, I know this is a little odd. But what would you think if we were like to combine our last names? And it, took a little bit. It wasn't just a one-time conversation. But we had
Yeah.
already had some friends who had done it. Um, and eventually, he came back and, we talked about like what it would mean. And then, yeah, we, did it. And I remember when we went to go get our marriage license, this was in New York. We went to, City Hall and they're like, oh, wait, he wants to change his last name too? And I was like, yes. They're like, let me go ask my manager,
Ah,
like, how this works, I said the
okay.
manager had to like step in and be like, oh no, yeah, this is, you can do this. And, so, we were able to like move forward with the process. But yeah. And then we had the other thing where when we, did the birth certificate for my daughter, she the county clerk was like, wait, but what's his last name? And I
Mhm.
was like, yeah, Bashez. She's like, is that his like official legal name? And it's like, yes, that
Yeah.
is his official legal name.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was like that back and forth conversation there. But now it's part of our story, and it's really great when we meet people and they're like, oh wow, like you've inspired me like to do that. We've had a few, Twitter like mutuals kind of like reach out to us and be like, hey, you guys like inspired us to like change our last name and now we're, you know,
Oh, nice.
this is our
Yeah.
new name. So
Well,
it's like,
like as someone who has, counseled many relationships or whatever, I I love the idea because it's sort of like it's because what I see sometimes with couples, it's sort of like I, right? Two eyes. But like you guys literally took the two eyes and made a we because I keep on saying,
yeah.
this is how you have to run the relationship now as a we. Like you're unified, you're unified as parents in the way you parent the child. You're unified. You got each other's back, in life, no matter what. Like you are a team.
Mhm.
So, I mean, you guys, like, took it to the next level and even combined your names like that and not just hyphenated, which
Yeah.
again has a very meaningful, like symbolic, it's not just like hanging on a thread, like, like
Yeah.
it's
We
kind
I
of
we
cool.
considered that as well, but the thing that I didn't like was that fine, the kid gets the hyphenated. But what happens when they get married? It's like
I know. I
they
know.
lose, the woman's last name, and there goes that. It's like, oh yay, you
Yeah.
got the name for like a couple decades, and now off you go.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
It's
exactly.
never
No.
sat right with me.
Yeah.
Especially
Yeah.
because like, we're the ones doing the hard work of
Ah,
like carrying the kids, and then um it's just not, yeah. So I never really liked that power balance, and I was so grateful at the time to have even learned about the possibility, because I know when I was younger, like it wasn't even a thing that I had like thought about.
no. No. I actually have never heard of that before, but, knowing that, like you were in New York and LA, like of course, like of course, like in the in America, it's
Yeah, but it's still, I've looked up the stats and it's still such a small portion or like percentage of like the population, even within,
I'm sure.
these, like,
Yeah, yeah,
liberal progressive bastions of San Francisco, New York, and LA, all three cities that we've lived in,
yeah,
still very rare. So
yeah,
we're seeing more and more like women just keep their last name.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but like I said, the problem is always like, look at the kids, what do the
Right.
kids get? Usually get, or I've seen, right, one kid gets like the dad's last name, the other kid gets like the mom's last name. But it's like it just never feels unified,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
But
yeah.
obviously each couple is gonna figure out what works best for them. This ended up
Hmm.
being the thing for us. And one of the things we've gotten is like, oh, well, it's great that your names like actually sound well together because like, and they tell us, their last names. We're like, oh yeah, I guess that doesn't really go.
Yeah, no, that's a good point too. It has to sound phonetically really good.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay. I'm gonna let you go, but one other thing I think it's important to always kind of talk about is how, like, because you both have challenging careers and you both love your careers, and it brings you a lot of pleasure, your career yourself itself. But how do you sort of set a little bit of a boundary in terms of, okay, this is family time now. Let's say your little daughter has some sort of, I don't know, I don't think she's going to some event, but like let's say, like, I don't know, it would be like daycare graduation ceremony or something like that. And he's like, I'm sorry, I got a big call going on. I can't be there, but it's meaningful for you. Like, so how do you like, is it like 5 p.m. cutoff? Like we're parents now? Do you
Mhm.
resume again after she's in bed? Like where do you get couple time?
Yeah. So it's funny you mentioned like like daycare, like graduation, because one of the things that we do is like we both take her to her doctor's appointments.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Yeah.
Notice that it's usually just the mom.
Yeah.
And that's like one of those things that like, early on I was like, hey, like, if we're gonna be planning this out, like it'd be great if we both go. So we both kind of like keep up with where
Hmm.
she's at, what she's doing.
Hmm.
And it's not just a thing that falls back on me.
Right.
Obviously, you hear the stories of like, women having that additional mental load and like the
Mhm.
emotional labor of having to like manage not just their schedule, but their kids' schedule. Um,
Mm. Mhm.
so for me, I guess I'm lucky in the sense that like my husband kind of lives and dies by his calendar. So if it's in his calendar, it's happening. So as long as we kind of like schedule it in, and I'm like, in his calendar, like booking the time,
Yeah.
um, it's like it's fine. But that is something like we check in pretty much daily to kind of be like, okay, what's your schedule? Who needs to be looking out for what? And then, there are times when like my mom, has to take day off or, go
Right.
visit like, her other grandchildren.
Yeah.
And that's when we kind of like have to figure out how to split the day and like what we're doing. So it kind of just is based on, importance, right? Like which are the phone calls that can't be changed, which are the meetings that can't, that are being prioritized versus ones that like aren't as important. Um,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
then we, also rely on like my parents. They give us like a weekly date night, and that's kind of where
Mm.
we make sure that we have like that couple time together. And then obviously at the end of the night when it's like baby goes to sleep, we have a couple hours there
Yeah.
for like ourselves to kind of like decompress.
Yeah.
But there isn't like a real separation between like, oh, we're talking about like business time versus,
No.
because
No.
it's like our businesses are so ingrained into our lives. And he's constantly helping me with mine. I'm constantly helping him with his. So it's just like becomes, kind of default confrontation sometimes. So
Yeah.
uh, trying to schedule that like that date night has become
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
the big thing. And we try to do monthly like planning calls of like kind of like the goals of what we're trying to do and like what we want to do like as a family. Um, like we just took a vacation in June. That was like, okay, we have to start planning for this, ahead of
Yeah.
time. Like, taking that amount of time off, we ended up doing like about 3 to 4 weeks
Mm.
almost. Um, it was a little unnerving because it's like, oh, so much can happen. But you're
Yeah.
never like fully off, you're
No,
still
I know. I
that.
know.
So you try to manage it as much as you can, but that's something
Yeah.
that we are both aligned on. So it really helps that like we can have those discussions and like have it be where we're both treated equally in terms of like the importance of both of our jobs because they both matter
Well, they
both
both
obviously financially, but then for our own like well-being as well.
exactly. No, it sounds great. I think, I'll let you know as someone who does this all the time, I think you're doing a pretty good job. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I love the fact that see you're almost treating your personal life like business. In like in terms of he lives and dies by his calendar. It's sort of like, this is important and therefore we are scheduling it in. And a lot of people don't do that. A lot of couples do not do that. It's sort of like yeah, 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 we'll get to that. Oh, yeah, yeah, we'll make sure that happens.
Mm,
But, like tomorrow never comes, that's why they have that saying. Like, I mean, it just like
yeah.
so
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's definitely been, I mean, we've had our like moments, trying to get to this, right?
yeah,
There's times when I was at, the company, it was easier for me to kind of take on more versus like him at being like the manager or CEO of like his company. It's like, okay, obviously there's like importance there, but now that dynamic has kind of changed and it's like
right,
we're
right.
both have to be on a little bit more than we were before. So it's like figuring out that new dynamic has been a new process, I guess. But
Yeah,
the communication is always key, and
yeah,
for us it's still very much like um, our kid comes first, of course, but then also it doesn't everything doesn't revolve around the kid. Like we made sure to kind of like integrate her into like our lives as well. So like we would take her out to restaurants, so she got used to that like super early on, and so now she'll come to like meals with us, and it like
exactly.
works. Or we'll um, take her to like do like walks around the neighborhood because we know she needs to kind of, get out her energy and be like a kid, right?
Yeah,
Um, how do we fit that into our schedule as well, so that she's also getting like her needs fulfilled. But it was yeah, and it's funny because it's like the different stages, right? When she was a newborn, was completely different than like now that she's like older. Like the newborn thing, I mean, I remember those discussions because it's like, oh, I was breastfeeding, but I made sure that I was pumping as well so that he could help,
yeah,
feed her as well, and I
yeah.
just didn't want to be the only one that would have to stay up, in the middle
Mm,
of the night. So even though he took like a month off for paternity leave, afterwards, like, okay, but our new schedule basically became like we split the night. So I would stay up until like, I think it was like 2 or 3 in the morning. She was like my charge, and then from like I guess like 5, right, 'cause she would sleep those 2 hours from 5 on, she became like his. So it's like
right.
we would split the day in that way in order to give us as much sleep as possible, but then also make sure that we were both taking care of her and it wasn't just falling back on me because, oh, I got an extra month. It's like, no, no, we need to start that
Right,
routine early so that you get
right,
used to it.
right.
um, and then continue that on, afterwards. And then, that changed as she got older, started sleeping through the night,
Yeah,
then I would, have her pretty much all the night, but then he had her all the morning, because
yeah.
my mom didn't start helping us until she was like full time helping us until she was almost a year old.
Okay.
So that first year, we still had to like figure out how to like fit her
Yeah.
into our lives, and us kind of take charge. My mom would come in the afternoons from like 1 to like 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, those mornings were rough.
Yeah. No
So
kidding.
we're in a different place now.
Well, I'm I'm going to respect your time, and I'm going to wrap it up here too. But before I do, like, I think this is one of the reasons I want, I felt like I want to talk more about mixing business and pleasure, because like, I think there's too many, there are the moms out there are the women out there that they have the child and they're like, this is me. Like this I, embrace it. I love it. The whole idea of being a mom, and I'm going to be home, or I'm going to take off a full year and may not go back, or 3 months or 2 months in your case, or whatever. But then there's those of us who are not. And I don't want any woman to feel guilty because they're not one of those
Mhm.
women. And like, I like what you said, like, we're going to prioritize our daughter, but we also are not going to, like, we're also going to bring her into our lives and integrate her into our lives, rather it being all one way, like we are now lords of this daughter, right? Like, no,
Mhm.
like she is going to tag along with us. Because I think, what you're saying there without saying it is sort of like, because we matter, like, my emotional health matters, our relationship matters, and therefore, like, yes, we are going to bring her into our lives and not,
Mhm.
you know, only be one way. Like, what, unidirectional is what I'm saying,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I definitely think that's also helped us like as a couple because it's like we're united in that and then also making time for ourselves to like not have completely just fallen into like, oh, you are parents now,
yeah, yeah,
which
exactly,
can be, all consuming, right? Like you
yeah,
can go down the rabbit hole of like more and more time that you're spending, with them.
yeah,
One of the things that made me that reminded me of actually was that we've taken care to make sure that she knows how to play by herself.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
whereas, I've seen and like read before where it's like, oh, my kid needs me to always be giving them more things to do.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Like that just doesn't seem like even for the kid, right? Like the kid should have, the ability to like be like, oh, I actually want to do this, or I want to go read, or I want to do, play by myself and be okay being alone.
what
Instead of like I need my mom to tell me what to do,
No, it's what you're saying is so important, because I mean, I studied child development as well, and like kids are losing their ability to imagine. And look how important, creativity is in your work.
Yeah.
If they can't figure out like something to create to entertain themselves, then yeah, what are we doing to our children? Like, especially with the whole AI stuff coming, and
Yeah.
like, it's so important to, yeah, to really
Yeah, I mean,
integrate
where do
that.
you see that with devices, right?
Oh, for
Like,
sure.
we've all seen, like, the kids with, like, their iPads at the restaurant next to their parents, you know? Um,
I
or,
know.
already having phones, like, super early, so
Yeah.
we're yeah,
Yeah.
mitigate that as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's really, it's like, and I'm older than you. So, I mean, I remember being taken to, like, if my parents wanted to visit, whatever, their friends, like, and we were taken along, and we just sat there while they visited. And like,
Yeah,
it's just sort of, and didn't question anything, it's sort of like, and now it's like, yeah, it's completely gone over the other end.
yeah, it's definitely a different
Yeah,
time.
no, it's no, it's great. I think you guys are doing a great job. So there.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay,
Awesome.
well, thanks so much for your time. It was just really fun getting to know you, Sonia, and we'll link all of her bio and her contacts in the show notes, everyone. And yeah, if you need some marketing needs, especially if you're a startup,
Yeah.
you got your person here. So okay,
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
okay, and everyone else, we'll see you next week. Bye bye. Thanks for tuning in to this episode. Remember that you can watch the full episode on YouTube, where I plan to hang out the most. Your feedback and suggestions for future guests are incredibly valuable to me, so please don't hesitate to post a comment. You are an integral part of this journey.